Okay. Time is 6:32, so I will call the meeting to order. First item,
Open session?
okay. Move on to item number 3 is
Public comment and communications?
there anyone from the public? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, roll call.
Mr. Farrier, absent. Mr. Perry is here. Mr. Rogers? Silva, I'm sorry.
Here.
Mr. Sulo?
Here.
Mr. Tavares? Mr. Vinatiero?
Here.
Chairman Furtado?
Here.
Public comments and communications.
Stating your name for the record.
Yes, my name is Richard Ferrera. I live in Riverside, born and brought up in East Providence. I'd like to thank you all for your public service because it's not easy to get involved in issues. You have one vote and you make 10 friends, and you have second vote and you lose 20. My background is after retiring from the police department as a captain, at times acting chief, we moved to Florida in 2003, like a lot of retirees. And while I was there, I was elected to the city council. It's a city about the size of East Providence. And 4-year terms, which I think are, this Charter Commission made a good decision. 2-year terms, I know good because by the time you get settled and you learn all the acronyms and you get involved, you're spending your time running around trying to get reelected. So the 4-year terms are good. On the issue, I served as deputy mayor for 2 years there. We had term limits, and it works. I'm an advocate for term limits for 2 good reasons. One, the person who can serve 8 years really can contribute his ideas and get the job done. However, to serve more than 2 terms at a time, some, as you know, the way people vote, many times it's not the issues, it's whether he's a nice guy, she's a nice guy, so forth. So it worked for us. 2 terms and a 2-year hiatus. If you go beyond 2 terms, 2 years, you get into a constitutional issue. But you can serve as a councilman and then run for mayor and serve 2 terms. That's a controversial issue. There are both sides of the issue here. A long-term person has experience, institutional knowledge. So, that's something that this Charter Commission is going to have to wrestle with, if at all. The second is recall. While I was in Florida, I kept in touch with the Journal and the East Bay News. And as you know, a few administrations ago, not this administration or the one before it, there was some problem with the candidates. One candidate had to be monitored. There should be a recall provision in the charter. It shouldn't be willy-nilly. It shouldn't be a city council deciding, that issue. It should go to the voters. But I think a recall is necessary. It would be very rarely used, but it's a backup for you. Other than that, I think the city is well run. And I think that having new people come in with new ideas, not afraid to serve, I think is a good argument for term limits. I can't stress enough, however, that this should be a nonpartisan city. We were nonpartisan. I was on the city council there where the Tea Party started. It started in Bonita and Naples. You can imagine what we went through. Talk about conservatism. I mean, it wasn't even out of sight. So it was a strong push for changing term limits and for putting in partisan politics. Some of the councilmen were taking orders in Tallahassee. But they couldn't say Republican or Democrat or Libertarian, because we were nonpartisan and we remain nonpartisan. And when the Charter Commission went out for a vote, the vote was 70% nonpartisan, for nonpartisan. So I know you got those issues to wrestle with and time restraint. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next item?
New business, approval of minutes, April 19th, 2023, April 26th, 2023.
There a motion to accept the minutes?
If I could ask a question first through the chair. Do we have a copy, have the minutes been sent to us? And I think I request that they be read before we vote to approve or not approve.
Would you like a copy of the minutes?
Absolutely. But I would like them to study before.
Have they been posted? Good. So, Mr. Solicitor, do you know if they have been filed with the clerk? No?
I forwarded them to, I forwarded the minutes of the 19th right away to Robin. And I forwarded the minutes of the last meeting last Friday. She did get them. She told me Monday morning that she had. Yeah, I was just. No, well, I was just following what Solicitor Connolly said to forward him to the law department, because I was concerned about when he was talking about the rolling quorum and
Mhm.
sending emails and all stuff. He said, just forward them to the law department, which I did.
Okay.
That's all I know. That
We can table until they're distributed.
Is
Would
there,
it be a problem if I sent the minutes to the
No.
commissioners?
No, as long as they don't comment on them and they can review them themselves. And if they have changes, they can wait till the next meeting to make the changes. But I apologize, but I wasn't aware they were forwarded to us. I wouldn't look for those minutes, but.
Through the chair, please. Seeing that none of us have been able to share it with the minutes being distributed, I'd like to make a motion that we table this
I'll second.
issue until our next meeting.
I'll second.
by Mr. Vinatiero, second by Mr. Rogers. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item?
Vote to amend meeting schedule.
So, once again, we find ourselves having to discuss rescheduling our meetings after having that letter sent from Council President Rodrick about funding from the solicitor's office. There was a concern about the issue of billing, and so and also the necessity of meeting on a weekly or at least 3 times a month. So, given those facts, it was suggested to meet once a month, given the fact that the council also stated that they made it clear their deadline that they needed proposed changes would be for the 24 election. So that being the case, I open the floor to discussion whether we want to have monthly meetings, bi-monthly meetings, keep it the same.
Through the chair. From what I understand, we're not able to get anything on the special ballot. Is that correct, Mr. Solicitor? It's too late on the congressional.
It's getting late. I don't know if it's too late, but it's getting later. Yes, there's a deadline. It's upcoming.
So with that being said, we're not going to be able to get anything on for 2 years, or 3 years, it really would be, 2026.
24.
Oh, 24, there's an election, okay. So with that being said, I don't think there's any great rush to move any of these items forward, which could certainly have a discussion in that time period, but to get it to the city council, like in a week or in a month, or it just doesn't do anything. It doesn't help matters, doesn't move them along really. So I would go along with what the council requests, especially because they mentioned they would have to pay the solicitors because they are billable, it's unbillable time. So my feeling would be to change to once a month.
Mr. Chairman, my personal feeling is that if we meet once a month, it allows for more time for preparation and study of issues so that when we do meet, possibly we could accomplish more. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't see any like time suggestion from the council. Like, did the council say we should need to decide? Like, if we were to do once a month, would this be considered our month for May and then we move forward to June?
That wasn't made expressly clear. Again, this was a suggestion. We can decide to meet as often as we want. We have the power to set our meetings. The council can't tell us to stop having meetings. It's more of a suggestion and also a courtesy, given the fact that having the solicitor here is important because we're reviewing a legal document, but the money to pay the solicitor comes out of the council's budget. And seeing as they also need the solicitor to do other things, and as I know, I've been told by my wife, lawyers are expensive. So. But I don't know if anyone else has a preference for once a month. I'm fine with it. I would ask if I know, Mr. Venatero, you said that Mondays don't work for you.
Yeah. Yes, I have building committee meetings on every the first Monday of every month.
Could we do a different Monday then? Because Wednesdays are not that great for me. I just drove 2 hours to get here. I got here right before we started. So would that be okay if we did pick a different Monday?
I'm sorry, I misspoke. It's the second Monday.
Second. I'm good with any Monday.
I have a conflict on the 3rd and 4th Monday of every month.
And through the chair, all of my meetings are on Mondays because that's how we do it. We keep all the Mondays open for those meetings. So I would have to work around. I mean, if everybody's in favor of it, I think this is important enough for me to be here. I ran for this office to serve the people, but it would be hard for me. I would have to change a meeting. Thank God I'm a chair of most of those organizations, so.
Mr. Chairman, my only concern with once a month is that every month you'd come here, and the first several minutes of the meeting, you'd have to review everything you did the month before. Whereas if you did bi-weekly, it wouldn't have to be that much of a review all the time. We'll be constantly reviewing what we did the month before and spending a lot of time on that. That's my only concern with once a month.
To the chair, with moving to once a month, I mean, this would be for right now, say more pertinent business were to come up, we could amend the meeting schedule later on as need presents itself. Correct?
Yes, yeah, we can always add more meetings. Because we need, by our mandate in the charter, we need to meet at least once a month.
Thank you.
I'm okay with once a month. The only thing is, some Mondays I have Rotary in the evening, but not, it's only maybe once a week, once a month that I'll have that at night.
Mr. Chairman, are all your Wednesdays tied up or particularly?
Yeah, I'm up in Concord, working at the air base. So I book it. But like you, I ran for the office, so I don't mind doing it if Mondays sound like they're busy for everybody. So if that's the case, we can stick with Wednesdays. So we can't do, what was it, the second Wednesday? You're fine any Wednesday. So sounds like you want to do once a month, or
I'll make a motion that we do once a month on a Wednesday.
you have to pick a Wednesday though.
So you think the best thing, I would think the best thing is to pick either the second Wednesday, third Wednesday, and do it every month. The first, second, or third, not change it each meeting. Is that how you feel? All right.
Mr. Chairman, I would propose the third because it's in the middle of the month.
All right.
You know, like it's like 2 weeks, because months that have 5 weeks. So you're looking at like 2 weeks before and 2 weeks after.
All right, let me make a motion if I may, Julie, I mean to cut you off, Mr. Chairman. I'll make a motion for the third Wednesday. And if I get a second, we discuss it. If it's not good for people, we'll change it right now. But I'll say the third Wednesday of every month at 6:30.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Rogers, second by Mr. Sulo. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay. Next item.
Vote for resolution to city council on up or down vote for charter amendments.
So I'm gonna, I put this on the agenda. I'm gonna ask for this to be tabled to the next meeting, but I just wanted to go over it. I didn't realize that members didn't see it till last night. This is essentially an MOU between the Charter Commission and the City Council. And all it's stating how the commission was formed, what our mandate is, and it's requesting that whatever we pass here, the City Council take an up or down vote on it. So the City Council is empowered by the state constitution to put whatever referendum they want for the charter on the ballot. So regardless of what we pass here, the council can accept the change, they can reject it, or they can modify it. What this is asking is that they would agree to vote up or down, or what's otherwise known as a clean vote, on what we pass. So if we were to pass something, it would be transmitted immediately to the city council, and at their next meeting, they would vote either up or down on it. If they voted no, it would come back to us with their reasoning of why they didn't like it. We could take it up again. We could accept their changes, tweak it ourselves and send it back. Or we could choose to take no action on it, in which case that would just, it would be dead. Held for further study, as the General Assembly likes to say. But the reasoning that I give for this is, unlike other charter commissions in the past, we have a majority elected charter commission. So we have 5 people on here that were elected by constituents that ran for office. And then there's 2 council appointments, 2 appointments by the mayor. So while our powers are derived by the city council, I firmly believe our legitimacy is derived directly from the people and by our constituents. And what I would like to see from this commission is, instead of us being a passive body that goes over the charter, okay, we're done, we hand off our recommendations to the council, they do whatever they want, we call it a day. I would like it to be a working group, a collaborative group, where they send us suggestions of what they would like us to discuss. And we discuss it, and we may like what they send us, we may not. We're going over later, Article 2. Councilman Lawson contacted me with some changes that he'd like us to look over. The administration sent proposals as well. And we do our due diligence, and we consider these things, and we debate them. And I think it's fair that in turn, the council would take that under consideration, that we have done our due diligence and should give these recommendations a clean up or down vote. And to address the elephant in the room, this tweaking at the last second, the last charter commission that we had did, I believe, a wonderful job. And they had, I think it was 1 or 2 things that passed through the charter commission that went to the council. And the council chose to change those proposals. What that did was throw off the entire way that the document read. And it severely hampered the charter that we operate with now. Because, as we know, the charter is not just individual sections. It comes together, and each section is dependent on the other. So the flow was broken. So what I'd like us to be, and what the intent was behind this commission originally, is for a collaborative body with elected officials, the city council, and the administration come together, work together, create proposals that, with public input, that are for the good of the city, goes to the city council, and essentially everyone has reached consensus on what they think is right, vote up or down on it, and then we put it to the people to vote. And at the end of the day, if the people like the changes, it goes to the charter. If they don't, it doesn't. And that's all this is. It's an MOU. Like I said, it's not binding. We don't have the power to limit the council's power. Even if they did agree to it, they could still do their changes at the last second. But this is just the first step to an agreement that I'd like to see.
Through the chair. Has the law department seen this, Mr. Solicitor? Have you seen this resolution? Are we within our legal rights to approve or not?
As the chair said, under the constitutional round, only city councils have the authority to propose charter amendments. Even the mayor's office doesn't get involved. It's a legislative act. They're the ones who are the gatekeepers, what goes on the ballot or not. You know, it's It's kind of more of a sense of it's kind of an ask, a wish, but they're by no way bound by it. And it would be really up to them to decide. I mean, I don't think the chair misspoke. I think he intended to misspeak when he said, he expect them to have a vote as soon as they get it. I would imagine, and I would advise the council that when they get a proposal from this body, that they look at it, and they probably put it on an agenda to look at it, and then they're probably going to want to have a public hearing on it. So to expect that they have a public up and down vote as soon as they get it, I don't know if that's probably possible, because I would imagine that they would want to have public hearings on what's coming up to them. But I haven't spoken to them about the process that they might want to look at. And the ordinance, this doesn't suggest that they have an immediate up or down vote, but that's kind of I think that's what you kind of suggested, and I don't know if that's feasible.
Well, the intent behind it is just that, and I'm trying to find the language that was in here, but it is, I think I put it at their earliest convenience. But it's essentially supposed to be to give the council time to digest what we're sending, but then also for them to send it back to us if they don't approve with recommendations on what they would like us to change. So there's time for us to pass that back to them and get these changes done before the ballot. The only thing I don't want to see is for the council to hold on to proposals and then at the last second do essentially what the General Assembly does, where they pass everything at the last second.
All right, so through the chair, you've requested that it be tabled because we just received it. I think that's a fair request. So I will move to table until the next meeting.
I'll second that motion.
Motion to table by Mr. Rogers, second by Mr. Vinatero. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Section 2-1, number, selection, and term, City Council, Joseph Tavares.
I put this on there because this is not something I thought of in the last couple of weeks. It's been something I've been thinking about for quite a while. And as the section 2-1 states, number, selection, and term, the council should have 5 members, 1 to be elected from any of the electors of each of the 4 wards of the city, and 1 elected at large for a term of 4 years, or until the majority of the newly elected council has qualified and taken office. Now, we changed, about 5 years already, we changed the mayor form of government. And I would think that it would have some effect on how the council should operate, or how it should be formulated. I did a little survey, in the state of Rhode Island. There are 39 cities and towns, 31 towns, 8 cities. I went and looked at the ones with the mayor, council, form of government. How are they stacked up for government? A good example is Central Falls has 5 wards and 2 at large, for a total of 7 councilpersons. Providence has 15 wards, 15 councilpersons. Cranston, 6 wards, 3 citywide, which I guess is similar to at large, a total of 9. Cumberland, 5 wards, 2 at large, total of 7. North Providence, they have 3 districts, and each district has 2 members and 1 at large, for a total of 7. Pawtucket has 6 districts and 3 at large, for a total of 9 councilpersons. Warwick has 9 wards, just 9 wards. Woonsocket, 7 wards, no at large. Johnson has 5 wards, total of 5. What's that, please? I knew what you said.
I used to represent Woonsocket. Woonsocket's all at large.
They're all at large.
They're all, yeah.
Yeah, but they got 7,
There's 7, and they run citywide.
Right.
Top 7 voters get to be on the city council.
all citywide, yeah. Johnson is 5 wards. I don't know if they're citywide or not, but they're just 5 wards. East Providence, we're 4 wards and 1 at large, for a total of 5. Presently, in East Providence, and this is my opinion, no resident of East Providence can vote for more than 2 council people. the one at large and one in the ward. Thus, they could never vote for a majority of the council. By moving to 7 councilmen, having 3 at large, the people of the city of East Providence would be able to vote for a majority of the council at every election. I think it would give the voters more voice in the running of their government. And opposed to, it's always been a thing in East Providence, you get the 3 votes, you get anything done. But we need to get away from that. It's time we change the government, we change the mayor. Now we need to change the council so that it reflects input from the people of the community. I think the people of the community should have more of a voice on the makeup of the city council. Something like that might need legislators, approval from the state. It wouldn't need approval from the state, okay. But there was a change to the charter, but I would like to see that something that we make a proposal on, that the city council in each province go to 7 councilmen. 4 wards, 3 at large.
So just so you, understand, so this is the process. So the process is that this committee would make a recommendation to the city council. The city council would then decide whether or not they approve or disapprove of it. It would go on the ballot. If they do approve of a change like that, it goes on the ballot. There's no need for state approval beforehand. What happens was if it would pass, you get state approval after the fact. And that's just really just a kind of a pro forma vote of the legislature, kind of like approving everything. But because this is a home rule charter, you have the right to change your form of government anytime you want to. And the name, number, whatever, so.
So what I'm asking of this commission is that if you feel the same way I do and want to propose to put this to the city council for consideration, I'd like to entertain a motion if that'd be the case.
Well, so let's have some more discussion on this.
Okay.
I've thought about having 3 council at large. I know the last charter commission. I believe the last charter commission that came up having 3 at large council members.
I don't even recall that. There were a lot of
Excuse me?
things that came up in the last charter commission.
Mr. Chairman,
I don't recall.
do you need a second so we can go into discussion? I'll second.
Okay, open the discussion.
Where are we?
We're open to discussion.
Okay.
Through the chair. I'm thinking back to the election that we just had. And myself and my family, we were actively involved in trying to solicit candidates for various offices. And at large, be it school committee or council, was the most difficult position to get a candidate for because it's prohibitively large and time consuming to walk the entire city to properly campaign as an at-large candidate, and it's 4 times as expensive. And we had a lot of difficulty getting anyone who would consider running at large. In individual wards, people could see that was a workload that they could handle, because most of the candidates are working people, and those are the people that you want. You want your average citizen to be able to campaign and run and represent their ward or their city. But at large can become a daunting task. And to triple that, I don't know where the candidates would come from. That's just a quick aside. Thank you.
in response to that, I realized that getting candidates to any election in this city is a task. How many candidates in this city run unopposed? Or, you know, they just seats go vacant sometimes in the city. Yes, it is difficult to run at large. But I think I'm looking at the fact that if you put it out there, there might be people that want to run for it. And plus, I'm looking for the fact that let the people decide who runs our government, not the 3 members of the council. That's all I'm looking at.
Well, then you're only changing it by one.
You're changing it by 2.
No,
Yeah,
4.
There's four council, 1 at large, and yeah,
4 council, 3. So rather than 3 running things, 4.
no,
So you only change it by 1.
I'm gonna change it.
Majority of 7 is 4.
Yeah, they change it by 1. Yes,
Change it by 1.
yeah,
So it's not a big, big difference.
it would make a difference.
Yeah.
Because people can vote for 4. Now they can only vote for 2. Now they might, if I go and vote, I can only vote for 2 people.
Mhm.
No matter how the rest of the council's made up. The only vote I got,
But you're representative in your ward and you're at large.
that's it. How much of a difference is that going to make on a council? In my case, if I can only vote for 2 people, not going to make much of a difference, is it?
Well, I think that's in everyone's case, isn't it? Sure.
Yeah, everyone's
everyone.
case. That's why I want to make it 4.
Okay.
That's why I want to make it 4 votes. So at least you have a shot at making a difference.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just wondering, seeing as Commissioner did some research, does it, with the other cities, did they have, like you said, some like broken down into districts? Was there any of them that they like split half the city? Like, was there anything proposed where it was instead of like say for instance, and this is just hypothetical, but is it possible to have someone run for 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, like, and split it in half? Is that a possibility to have the 2 extra ones that they wouldn't have to be completely at large to the whole city? I'm just asking because I hear what Mr. Minutero is saying, and I also have been in the process of trying to find people to run for different seats and stuff. And it's difficult to get people interested civically in any position. But there's a number of reasons why people are hesitant to run for office. And some of it is the time of getting, at large campaigning through entire city. Some of it is financial. Some people just can't afford it. And we've made everything so expensive, with just the cost of living. So I don't want to totally not consider it because it does make sense. I've thought of it myself, that it would be nice to give the people more of an option to have a stronger voice. So is it possible? I don't know if there's a legality to it. Is it possible to propose something where it wasn't completely at large? If you're creating 2 new positions, can you?
Yeah, you can make, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt.
No.
You can carve up your city any way you want. It really is just going to be a district, right? It's going to be, it's a larger district than a ward. So you can figure it out, but it doesn't really kind of make sense to do it that way because you're basically just creating another district, right? So if you really want, the theory behind an at-large is that an at-large person represents the entire city. It's not tied to their ward or their little neighborhood. So they're supposed to look at the general benefit of the whole city. That's the theory of it. So the answer is yes, you can carve up your districts any way you want. But you also, let me take that back a little bit. You also have to have I don't think you actually put more. I think about the principle of 1 person, 1 vote. You can't have a district that from population is so much greater than the next. In other words, you can't have 1 person represent 100 people and the next person represent 200, right? So the answer is no. Actually, it's either at large because you are representing the whole city, or the districts have to be proportional to their. They have to be similar in size because their votes can't be less than, you can't disenfranchise another person by having a smaller district or a larger district. So well, that I talked about, no, you can't. It's either at large or district, but you can have a combination of the two. You can have districts and then at large.
Okay, thank you.
But
That-
each district in this city, I think, is about how many people, Mark? 4,000? No, it's probably less than that.
Yeah.
Each ward, yeah. So that's, you got to keep it like that. I mean, you could eliminate districts and make them bigger. But each district, if you're going to go a district, those districts have to be roughly the same in population. Sorry.
Plus or minus.
I think it's actually less than that, but yeah. So I'm sorry.
I recall now, some of us listening to the conversation. We did discuss this in the last Charter Commission, and it was suggested that just what we were talking about, changing the district, making the wards smaller, making more wards and all, but just the logistics of it, what would be, entitled, we'd have to go through that, figuring out how many people for each ward and all, and it would just, we thought it would be just too much of a burden, and that it would be fine with the way it was now. With the, full ward.
The only thing that I see on this is that eight other cities all have more than seven or more. And here we are, East Providence, we just have 5. Of mayor, council, form of governments. If they can do it in these other cities, why can't we do it in East Providence?
Through the chair, 4 of those other cities have larger populations.
Through the chair. I think we need to look a little bit at history too. I think we can all recall at one time when school committee was all at large. And the consensus of the community was that they wanted to go to wards and reduce the at large. So they went from 5 at large on the school committee to 1 and 4 wards. And that was, 20 years ago, maybe? So, the at-large wasn't all that popular. And what happened was, I think, again, there was 1 ward that had the majority of the seats on the school committee, and the rest of the city felt that they weren't being served. So they wanted to revert to wards, and the charter was changed. And that's also when the charter changed to the 2-year terms for the school committee. They used to be staggered 4-year terms, which is a subject that I'll leave until we get to that section. Thank you.
The only reason I bring this up this evening is because this has gone on for years. It took us 40 years to change the city manager to mayor, okay? Something like this will probably take us another 40 years, but that's besides the point. I'm just looking at the state of, I think it's time that the people of East Providence have more input as to who sits at this table, in opposed to just having 3 members who sit here, and if they're in the right block of people, they are constantly, and they control the city. They control everything that gets passed. They control everything. I think people should, you like this, should be have a voice, Okay, now that's my personal opinion. And whether we do anything with it, I don't know. I've been thinking about this for years. I brought it up for discussion. If you guys want to vote on it, so be it. If not, I'll keep bringing it up.
So, I'm not advocating it. I'm just throwing it in for discussion. If you want to talk about expanding to 7 people without having to go through changing the districts, which would be more work and increased cost to the city. One thing to look at, and it was hinted at, is staggering terms. So usually the way you would do it would be, if you were expanded to 7 members, 3 at large, 4 in the wards, you'd have like every 2 years, or 2 years would be, 4 wards would be up for election. 2 years later, the 3 at large would be up and it would serve 4 terms, or 4 years. And the benefit to that form of council government is that you get the continuity. I've found for complaints that I've heard is that right now our government is essentially all up at the same time. So you can, you know, you can have the mayor, the city council, the school committee, and all change in the same election. And, you know, some people might consider that a good thing. But what you do lose is continuity. And one thing that people need to think about is you have contract negotiations, you have, are in the middle of construction projects. There are a lot of inner workings in the city that people don't necessarily think about while they're at the ballot box. And again, I'm not advocating for this right now. I'm just putting it out there for discussion, that if you were to increase it to 7 members, it might be in the interest to think about staggering terms for the sake of continuity.
A lot of nice comments. And what I want to do is I'm going to listen to these comments. I'm going to sit down and look at it again and try to come up with another way of doing it. But I seriously believe we need to increase the involvement of the people of the city of East Providence with the elected officials as far as how decisions are made on the city council. And so I'll table this for now, I guess. Mr. Chairman, I'll table this for now, and I'll be back. Okay?
All right.
So Robert's Rules of Order, if I may, I think the maker of the motion. Okay.
Yeah.
That was a motion.
Yeah,
to table.
move to the table.
Okay. I'll second it.
I just feel good I was able to bring it out for consideration.
Thank you. And I extend this once again to everyone. If you have things you want to discuss with the Charter Review Commission, we're reviewing the charter, tell me, whoever's told me, put it on the agenda, we can bring it up. I want to go through the charter section by section, but also have something you really want to discuss, slap it on the agenda, we can discuss it, take point on it. You know, we can have that frank discussion. You got a motion to table, second,
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next item?
Discussion, Article 1, Basic Provisions. Apologize. Section 11-5, Nonpartisan Ballot, Joseph Tavares.
Okay. There's another one I've been bugged with. Section 11-5, it says nonpartisan ballot. In all municipal elections in the city of East Providence, whether primary, general, or special, there shall be no party mark or designation upon any ballot or upon any declaration of candidacy, nomination petition, or list of candidates. Our country was formulated on a two-party system. Democrats, Republicans. And it seems to me that if somebody wants to run the office, people need to know what side of the fence they're standing on. Are they a conservative? Are they a socialist? Are they, people need to inform people what they are. If I was to come out the closet, if you're running for an office and you got Republican ideals, say I'm a Republican. You got Democrat ideals, I'm a Republican. I'm a Democrat. In fact, last election, we had the choice. We had 3 parties: Republican, Democrat, and People's Party. I mean, so I think it's time we decided that people started owning up to what they are as far as political affiliation, and opposed to everybody running nonpartisan. Because people voting have a right to know where you stand.
For the chair. Mr. Tavares, you seem to have done quite a bit of research. Did you do the research on if any city and towns in the state of Rhode Island have nonpartisan elections?
Well, I know that nationally, 66% of local municipalities have nonpartisan elections. That's the number I got, 66%, which that's a number I'm looking at. My personal opinion, I think it should be everybody's opinion. I would like to know who I'm voting for. Who am I voting for?
66, I'm sorry to interrupt you, 66% in the state have nonpartisan elections?
National,
Oh, okay.
local elections.
But you're not sure in the state?
I haven't done that, no.
I can help you out there. So Woonsocket is nonpartisan. Tiverton is nonpartisan. North Smithfield is nonpartisan. Trying to think of cities.
Is Pawtucket still or no?
Tucket is partisan. I believe Coventry may be nonpartisan. The only city that I know that is nonpartisan in the state is Woonsocket.
Thank you.
I can find out more, but it might just generally. And then some of the smaller towns. North Smithfield, I said North Smithfield. North Smithfield is nonpartisan as well.
Let me just ask you one more question. Are you 100% familiar with the charter where if it is changed to partisan election, are there other sections of the charter that are affected by this?
Generally, yeah. I mean, it would have to be, we'd have to pull it apart a little bit, but not terribly.
Okay.
Because you still have even though you have nonpartisan, you still have a primary, right? So, in other words, if you have more than 2 people running for the same office, you require a primary. Some towns like Tiverton doesn't. So if 6 people want to run for city council, if there's 7 seats, and if you have 23 people running for town council, they all get to the ballot. You guys have Woonsocket also has a primary to limit it to 2, so you get down to 2 for the general election. So it's not that hard to make that change here.
Thank you, Mr. Solicitor.
Through the chair. First, Joe, we weren't created as a 2-party country, okay? There were no political parties when the country was founded. Okay, political parties evolved afterwards.
Well, that's
But George Washington was apolitical. He didn't belong. You can't say Washington was a Democrat or a Republican or a Federalist or
we
anything.
got into series.
But over time, we have. And we all know that candidates tend to go into one political party or one political philosophy or another. I think one of the strengths of the nonpartisan system that we have is that everyone elected in East Providence gets elected with a majority of the vote. If you go to partisan elections, you could walk into a ballot. Right now, when you walk into a ballot box, pick an office, school committee, city council, mayor, either one, right? You've got 2 candidates. Someone's going to get a majority rules. If the city were to go to a partisan election, now you could have several candidates on the ballot, all representing different parties, because it's not just Democrat and Republican. As you just mentioned, the last election, we had a 3rd party. There could be a 4th or a 5th. You could have a person be mayor of the city with 26% of the vote. That cannot happen now with nonpartisan. And I think in reality, when we walk into the ballot box, if we've done our homework, we know the political leaning of the candidate. We know whether that, even though it's a nonpartisan ballot, we know the philosophy of that individual, whether they be conservative or liberal, where they stand on issues. And hopefully the voters do their work and don't get blinded by the party affiliation and vote for the best candidate and the person who has stated their views that meets their needs the best, not just because I'm going to go in and vote for the person under the donkey or under the elephant. They're going to vote for the best candidate. And you know, the country was based on majority rule. And I think the only way that we can guarantee that the elected officials are elected with a majority of the vote is to remain nonpartisan. Thank you.
Through the chair, I happen to agree with Mr. Tavares. The known fact and the reality of it is when there are strong party systems, there are 2 or 3 or 4 Democrats running against each other, the person who stands with the party platform and that particular party generally wins, and they win by presenting it to the people of the city. Same thing with a Republican Party, Democratic Party, any party that has a primary gives the difference of here's what I stand for. That's why I'm a Republican. Here's what I don't stand for. And what we like to think, the people of that particular party are choosing who they think is the best to represent them in an election in the fall, no matter what party it is. It's also a reality, and this is good and bad, that if you have a strong candidate in a city that wins either the mayor's position or city council, governors and so forth of the same party respond better to that party because they stand with them on the platform and because they, quite frankly, can deliver X amount of votes from that particular party to that person that's running the state or running the Secretary of State's office or running the Lieutenant Governor's office. They respond to them better. And I know this as a party chair.
I was just wondering if there's more discussion.
Mr. Chairman, seeing as we're discussing the different probabilities of, having partisan versus nonpartisan, I think one of the other things that we really need to consider too is right now as a nonpartisan election, we actually have our candidates doing double the work. And the reason why I say that is there are some people, they're winning and they're beating people twice to get to a seat. When Mr. Vinatero spoke the last time about, it's very difficult to find people to run for office. And he was making a very legitimate statement. I think we need to look, if that's something we got to, if we're considering it for one issue, we need to consider it for another issue too, because people, they can't afford to do these primaries and general elections to beat the same person. If you look at, and the reason why I say the same person is if you look at like some of our past elections and you look at like our city council or our school committee, where there was 3 people running. Well, the top 2, they knocked out one person. So the 3 people ran, the top 2 won the primary. Well, now the top 2 had to fight again to win the general election. You're constantly running against, you're forcing people to run against the same person. So you gotta wonder, how productive is that? Is that stopping people from running? Are they concerned about that? We had some school committee that there was a lot of 3s this time, where there was 3 running or 4 running. And then they were in the grand scheme of things, the person who got top for the primary got top in the general election, had to spend a lot of extra money in between to prove that they were the best person. So I hear both sides of it. I just think we need to, if we're going to discuss it, we need to discuss it completely. And there are some issues with the nonpartisan because granted, you have to do your research. You got to do your research no matter what, if they're not going to be forthcoming. Some people say they're one thing, and as we've seen in this last election, you can find that there are other things. But my biggest concern too is the repetition. Like you have a candidate that's running and then they have to run again. Like, is there a way of would partisan fix that? And I'm not 100% sure, but would partisan fix that? Would it fix it so the only time you're running is if you have two separate party affiliations? Would that stop that?
So what we have right now is what's called the jungle primary, where everybody runs in the same race, and yeah, top two move on. My question for the solicitor is, and I'm not advocating, I'm just putting this up there for discussion. Could separately, apart from the partisan aspect, could we put in a mechanism in the way that we do elections that if a candidate was to get over 50% of the vote in a primary, regardless of how many people were running, that they could outright win? No?
So one thing that is clear with home rule charters is that election law is governed by the state. So the state has a primary system, and you can't skip the general election. Basically, you can't. So no, you have to follow the framework of the state. Now you can do nonpartisan, right? But you can't jump a system like that because the state still has control over the elections. So.
And my other question is,
Oh, can I ask I'm sorry, can I answer the question of the commissioner at the end? I'm sorry, I forgot you. Susan, it's not Susan, what's that? Julie, I'm sorry, Julie, it's late. It's a long day. So I understand what you're trying, I think I understand what you're saying, you're running against people, but that necessarily wouldn't be so if it went to a partisan, you could still have 6 Democrats running for the primary, right? For the school committee, let's say, 6 Republicans for 1 seat. So they still have to have a primary because you're going to get the Democratic nominee and the Republican nominee, but you're still running against those people. So that's one election. And then, so once the Democrats pick their candidate and the Republicans pick their candidate, you still go to the general. So there's no guarantee that you're just going to have 1 or 2 people in a primary. You could still have 6 people who want to run in a Democratic primary or a Republican primary. And one thing that still can't be done is that if you want to be unaffiliated and you want to run for office, you make it all the way to the game, the end of the dance. So if you run in no party, right, you just want to be unaffiliated and you get enough signatures, you're on the ballot. So then you could have a Democrat, Republican, and how many in unaffiliated voters?
Through the chair, please. We've mentioned the city of Providence that has partisan elections. Now, I'm not going to get into names, but there was an infamous mayor in the city of Providence, okay, who never won with a majority of the vote. Why? Because it was always a 3 or 4-way race. It watered it down. And people would say, how could that person get elected? You got elected because everything was watered down. You didn't need 50% of the vote to win. You could win with 37%. That cannot happen in our city. Whether you like the candidate who wins or you don't like the candidate who wins, the one thing that you're certain of is you got a majority of the vote. And majority rule is something that I will always support.
so Title 17, right? Elections.
17.
Can East Providence, and so I know that the state governs elections. If East Providence was to do partisan elections, could it also implement ranked choice voting? New York does. That way you have partisan, but you're also making it so that the person always has %.
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I think that that would require, you could pass a charter amendment, but that still would require that General Assembly approval over that specific provision. And maybe, and they might approve it or not. I don't know. It may not fit in with our current voting machines either, but it's, I don't know the answer to that. I can't say definitively whether that would work. You know, and just comment on the other side. So right, you're not guaranteed, like under the nonpartisan system, you're guaranteed, you're going to get down to 2 people, assuming that you got 2 people running for whatever office it is, right? Under the primary system, the current mayor of Providence won in a primary, and I think there was no Republican, there was no general election, and he won with like 33% of the vote. Not even, I don't think. It was a minimal amount. And I think there was 5 people running in the Democratic primary. He won the primary. There was no general election, and so he won. So it can happen on the primary. It can happen on the primary side, especially when you don't have a strong 2-party system.
Through the chair. I need to disagree a little bit with the solicitor. You automatically, if there's no, whatever party or no party affiliation, if you wish to run for a particular, you brought up school committee, if you wish to run for school committee in a 2-party system and you are unaffiliated or you are Bull Moose or whatever, you go right on the ballot if there's not a primary for November.
Correct.
So anybody who wants to run, if they say, I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a Republican, you still obviously can run and you go on the ballot. If they're 2 unaffiliated running, I would believe you would have to have a primary just like the Democrats.
No.
Oh, they would go on the ballot in the fall. Okay. So everybody who, nobody's precluded from running. They could all run and they would go on the ballot automatically if they get the signatures.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that the commission consider sending to the city council, vote at the next general election as to whether East Providence should be partisan or nonpartisan. Let the people decide.
A ballot question, you mean? Just a general ballot question?
Yeah.
Not a charter change, but a question on the ballot. Not a charter change, but a general poll, basically saying,
Right.
should East Providence adopt nonpartisan partisan elections?
Let the people decide whether they want.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but that's different from a charter, right? That's
It's different from the charter, just the
just a general sense. You want
general
people to,
question.
just want to make sure I understood what you're saying.
I'll second that for discussion purposes.
Okay, through the chair, do we have the authority to do that? Doesn't that take the council to do something like that? To put something on a ballot?
He said that ask the council to.
Or to ask the council?
Yeah.
Oh, I misunderstood you. I'm sorry.
Well, I would say send it forward to the council to see if they would pursue it, whether they go forward, would put that question on the ballot.
I misunderstood you. I'm sorry.
Again, through the chair, the solicitor, what would, if the council says, yeah, that's a good idea, we want to do it, they have to pursue how to do it? Is that what happens?
Yeah.
Well, I would think it's out of our authority. I don't think that's part of our duties. I think a charter
So
amendment would have to.
I'm gonna ask 2 things. One, for the solicitor is a procedural thing. I know the council makes a distinction on their docket where items either for discussion or vote are clarified on the docket. So this is on here as a discussion item, and it be voted on. 1.
Just discussion, really. It's a chart. You're here to recommend charter changes, not ballot questions, right? There's a difference. I would, not unless it's, as it's listed on the agenda. Oh, no, not now. Not as it's listed on the agenda. But if you want it at another period, again, it's a little beyond your authority, because again, there's a difference between a recommended charter change and asking the city council to put a ballot question on, right? Ballot question is just I want to get the feel of the voters, whether they support something or not. You could ask, there's nothing, it's non-binding. So even if the voters said yes or no, it's non-binding on the council, it's non-binding on anything. It doesn't change anything. All you do is just get the sense of the voters, whether they want to have nonpartisan, continue to have partisan or nonpartisan elections.
So I would recommend that if that is the case, if for the next meeting, so you want to put that on as a vote specifically.
I would just like to get their input.
My other question that I had was, do we have information from the latest census on party identification in East Providence?
Through the chair, I do.
Do you know the percentage of registered Democrats as of the last census? I know prior than that,
I have a number. I have an exact number, not a percentage.
if you have it compared to independents and
Yeah.
Republicans.
Yes, 17,078 Democrats, 14,726 unaffiliated, 3,950 Republicans.
So the reason I asked that, so the reason I asked that question is, I didn't have the recent numbers, but before that, my opinion had always been that East Providence was a partisan city, regardless of what the charter had said. When you have a majority of people that are registered Democrats, regardless of what the form of government said. However, I also know that national trends are people are disaffiliating from parties. So I just want a clarification on what the numbers were. Sounds like they're steady though.
Yeah. And through the chair, this is known, but right now, it's my opinion as well, the unaffiliated tend, in the city of East Providence, tend to lean Democrat. In a nonpartisan election, a lot of people who are party affiliated, whether it be Democrat or Republican, unaffiliate so that they can vote possibly in the other election. Come on. But the trend is that they vote in the Democratic primary. I can't give you those numbers. It's a statement. Mr. Chairman, if you feel that this is appropriate, the issue that was on the agenda, which means there can be a motion made, I would make a motion that we send this to the solicitor's office for further information, such as how many cities and towns in the state of Rhode Island are partisan. I don't care outside of the state. Are partisan elections. How did they do it? Things such as that, so that can be brought back for further discussion, and then we can vote on it as a recommendation to the city council as a charter amendment. I would make that motion now.
We don't need a motion for that.
So I can, I actually have some of that already done because I was a member of a charter commission in my town. So I have a 4 years ago, I think I have a kind of running list. I want to make a distinction, however, just so you guys know, there are many school committees in the state that run nonpartisan. So they might have an elected council, partisan, but a nonpartisan school committee. That's generally the trend for school committees. So they're split. I'm not aware of any city that has a split, like allow the mayor to run partisan and the council to run nonpartisan. It's either one or the other. You don't, so, but I can get you, I will dig out of my files. I have a list of what councils, how many members are on each council, nonpartisan, 4-year terms, term limits. It's kind of like a running thing that I had prepared a while ago. So I'm sure it hasn't changed that much.
And
So
am I correct, Mr. Solicitor, if two people run from any party, or do they have to have had a percentage of a total in the last election? Does that still go on?
say that again, I'm sorry.
In other words, if somebody from a party that we haven't named, not Democrat, not
Yeah.
Republican, if two people run from that party, how do you know if it's?
No, so there's only two recognized parties in the state of Rhode Island. Right now, I don't think the Reform Party, I think, is now defunct.
Yep.
So the two recognized parties are Democrats and Republicans. So if I wanted to run for the city council of East Providence as the Cool Moose Party, and you wanted to run as the Cool Moose Party as well, you would just go onto the ballot you would be listed as Cool Moose, but there would be no primary because you're not an organized party. You would just have your name listed and it would say Cool Moose
November.
in November. Yeah. There would be no primary because there's no party, no recognized party. Right.
Just for clarification, Solicitor, that would mean 4 names on the ballot?
In that situation, yes. For that office, whatever that office would be.
So someone could be victorious with 27%?
Correct.
Okay.
So my recommendation is that if you want to have the vote on that, then for the next meeting, that we can put this back on for a vote, or if you want to hold off until we have the information that Mr. Rogers wanted, we can wait until we have that as well. Okay. Also, the other thing too, that we can choose to do is, since we're going to be going section by section through the charter, is we can wait to vote on an issue like this when we get to it. I would highly recommend that. So we can have these discussions now, but I would recommend once we get to that provision in the charter, that would be the time.
Like I stated earlier, I brought those up because I've been carrying those things for a long time.
I don't think you're alone on that, on this commission.
Can I make a suggestion? I'm not on the member, but I think that it would be beneficial to have some kind of framework or rules that you run under, because you may decide to go with partisan elections or nonpartisan, whatever, but it does affect other charter provisions. So every vote that you take, really, in my opinion, should be a preliminary vote subject to the approval of an entire package. Because you don't know how a vote on X for term limits, for instance, may affect the number of council members that you might want on the council, right? If you say you got term limits, well, maybe we really don't want 7 council members, maybe we really want 5 or something like that. So again, it's just my suggestion. It's how I ran it when I was a member of a charter commission, that all the votes were kind of like preliminary, but then you voted on a final package that you could send up. I know you want to send it up piecemeal, but I don't really think it's a realistic way of sending it up piecemeal, because these are so interrelated.
So what I'd like to do is that when we cover a suggestion, or when we cover a section, since we have input from the administration, input from members of the council that choose to give their input, we'd have discussion here, we'd vote on what we want, then we'd have the law department put the language together, what it would actually look like as charter language, bring it back, and then vote on the actual language. I think there was a missed opportunity on the last commission where they voted on provisions without actually seeing some of the language that resulted in issues. And I'd also like to do it that way, so that if we see particular lines that are written in a way that we don't like, we can vote to amend that.
Through the chair. While we're discussing with the solicitor, may be appropriate for me to ask this now because such as, he handed us today, that section 1-1 status, first sentence changed not to now. It's just was a grammatical error, typo. In the preamble, for instance, we the people of the town of East Providence, we're a city. Do we have to vote? We should bring up every single one of those and fix those? Okay, all right, thank you.
I missed that one. I didn't see the preamble. I missed
Yeah,
skip
the
the
preamble
preamble.
and then the city status 1-1, it's called the town again. I hadn't gone through it all for that, but quite a few places.
So you could make a general motion at some point to change town to city. And
I don't think we can change town to city. I don't believe we have to. I think state law doesn't make a distinction between town and city. It uses it.
Yeah, I don't think we should be called a town if we're not a town.
we're recognized at the state level as a city, but the charter should reflect the fact that we're a city.
Town in America. That's why we're towns.
That could be like a general, we call it a omnibus change, like change throughout the charter, change the word where it says town to city. That could be one ballot question, makes sense.
Okay. So that was 11-5. So that was my suggestion. And no further discussion on the item. We can move on to the next item.
Discussion, Article 1, basic provisions.
So it seems as if we already got into a discussion on that. The administration sent its changes over. We also got changes suggested by Councilman Lawson. They're on my phone. He emailed them.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. Is the council going to submit them as a body, or are we going to accept them individually per council member?
So that's up to the council. When we transmitted those letters, it could have been either way. The council has chosen apparently to send them individually. Councilman Lawson is the only one that has so far sent any recommendation. His don't start until section 2-6. So
Well, will you be able to type them out or print them out and give them to all of us so we can review it? Like we got the proposed ones from administration.
well, I can read them off my phone.
I'd like to look at them though. I mean, I'm not trying to be difficult, but this is a lot. And being an elected member, I'm representing I want to be able to sit down with this charter and take these proposed suggestions and match it to the charter so I can, make educated decisions. I don't think it's fair that they're emailing you and we're not getting a printed copy of it. I mean, if they want to send us each representative 5 different ones, that's fine. Or if they want to put them all on one and list Ward 1 suggestions, Ward 2, 3, 4, and at large. I don't care how they do it, but I really feel as a courtesy, it should at least be on paper and submitted to us.
Well, it's 4 changes, it's 4 suggestions, 2 of them are questions. And we got them in a more timely manner than we did the administration question. So
Well, not
I'll-
necessarily
I'll
because
read them out loud and you can choose whether you want to take them
But-
under consideration or not.
Mr. Chairman,
I'll read them.
you got them in timely fashion. As far as I'm concerned, I already have a copy from the administration and I have nothing from the city council. So yes, you received them and you've had a chance to read them and look at them prior to this. I didn't. So to say that they came before the administration, technically being given to us after the administration gave their list. And that's a moot point. It doesn't matter when we get it. I'm just saying you had an opportunity to look at it. That's fair. That's fine. But then it should be submitted to us somehow other than read. Just my opinion.
I mean, you're entitled to your opinion. You can take it up with the city council.
Can I just say, I don't think the city council has decided one way or another how they're going to approach this. They did get the letter, but they can't make the decision until they meet to discuss it, right? How they want to handle it, how they want to get proposals to you. So I'll bring that up to them. I think it would be beneficial for them to have a workshop as a group, and kind of go through what they think needs to be changed or should be changed as a group. And then, of course, any individual council member still has the right to ask you guys to change something, individually. But I think it's a little difference between when one council member brings something to you and then the entire council brings something to you as a body that, they want to change. So but in fairness to the council, they have not met since getting that initial letter. I don't think, right? No, we have not met.
Through the chair. Mr. Solicitor, do you recommend that as we get these, however we get them, if the chairman gets them and reads them to us, or if we get copies of them, do you recommend that we speak to each council member about what they've submitted, what they mean by it?
Well, I would hope that if the council person submits something that they either appear before you to explain what they want, or, again, if the council as a body meets, then there'll be a record of what they want, and it usually would come from our office. In fairness, don't forget, the solicitor is a lawyer for the city council. I have not met with the city council. And frankly, and we call these administration proposals. These are just cleans up that we found from the law department. I did have a discussion with the mayor with some of these, but we haven't had these. I have not had a formal discussion with all of these with the mayor. But some of these are just cleanup.
So let me get this clear. Your recommendation is that I don't pick up the phone and discuss with Councilman Lawson what he is
Oh,
saying.
you absolutely can. I mean, I'm not saying you can't, but I'm just if that's what you want to do. But I would hope that that if a council person individually has a proposal that they care enough to submit it, that they come and explain it to this body as to why they want to do it. Again, I think there's a difference between a council approved list that gets sent to you, which is a right, it's the whole body asking you to look at something, as opposed there might be a split of opinion. And the council, again, let me just be practical. If you're proposing something if you're looking at something that only one council person has wanted, and I don't even know what those proposals are, but you don't have the support of the other members of the council, you're wasting your time, because it's very unlikely that those are going to even get voted up or down. So, voted by the council to accept something that one council person wants. I would think the better provision is that the council has a workshop, goes through the charter, and then says, these are our top 5 asks that we would like you to consider, or clarifications that we need. And there are some. I mean, there are some that definitely need to be clarified. So I don't know if that didn't answer your question or not.
Yeah, it did. And with that being said, I would request that the chairman not read what he has on his phone to us.
I'm still going to read it same way. I understand where you're coming from. My counterpoint to that would be that this is no different than if a member of the public was to put forth their opinions. It's someone expressing their opinions on the charter. And yes, it would have been beneficial for Councilman Lawson to be here. I understand he's double booked essentially. Otherwise, he would have
Mr.
This is
Chairman,
nothing against Councilman.
But he sent me a question. It's the only council person to respond. Asked me to read questions. I'm going to read the questions just like we're going to go through the administration. You don't have to accept them. You just need to acknowledge them. That's it.
Mr. Chairman, would like something clarified, though. You said it's like the public. It's not like the public. Public comment is on our agenda. Public can come in. This gentleman took the time out of his schedule to come in to bring his position to us. So I don't think it's fair to say it's like public because Mr. Lawson, as public, during public comment or as a courtesy, you would give him to speak, could come before the commission. So as long as we clarify that, I don't want people listening to the meeting to think that they have to submit something and an email through you where the public has the right to come in and can speak under public comment.
And through the chair, it's also different because public comment is from the public and they're telling us and they can disagree all they want. They are not the body that is authorizing the charter amendments for up for election.
Through the chair, point of discussion. I mean, this is the first, we received proposed changes through the administration, and then there's through one city councilman. At this point, are we setting a protocol to what's acceptable to the commission? Because I sense some dissatisfaction at the way it's being presented at this point. Not that regardless of what the content of the suggestions are, just as setting up a protocol of communication between the council, the elected body, and the commission itself. I mean, we're setting a protocol at this point, whether I know it's acknowledgement or not, regardless of the content. Is this what we really want to do?
So it's my understanding the council has not met yet, correct? Since the letters were sent to them. We asked for opinions from the city council and its members. That was written in the language in the letters. We have opinions and also questions from one of the members from the city council that was sent. I'm being asked now not to read the questions that were sent from the letter that we solicited. I failed to see the argument here.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. We sent a letter to our council president, Mr. Rodrick, correct? You sent one specifically to every single, the way I read this, it was sent to the president of the council, asking for the purpose of the commission for the council to review this and for them to please within, I mean, I could be wrong, Mr. Solicitor, but the way I'm reading this, at least the letter that I received, unless there's other letters that I didn't get a copy of, the one that I got received that's signed by our chair was sent to the council president, Rodrick. So I looked at it as that's a formal request to our entire city council. And we are asking for them either to decide individually or as a body to respond to this through their president. Am I missing something?
I don't remember, I don't know how that letter was distributed. I know it was, I don't know if it was sent to the city clerk and the city clerk sent it to the rest of the members. I think we need to obviously clarify how this is going to work, but I don't see any problem of you're not going to take any votes or whatever. If a council member has requested information or suggested change, you just hear it like we hear anything else, and we'll clarify the procedure with the council when I meet with them next week as to how they're going to proceed. I think you're just wasting a lot of time. I mean, I do agree that there's a difference between when an individual council members ask for something and then you hear from the entire council. But as an individual council member, they certainly have a right to propose charter changes as any member of the public would. So I don't think we should just waste a lot of time going over, I think the point is well taken, and I think that we just need to figure out how the council is going to. The council has not had an opportunity to meet as a council to propose or to even suggest changes that they want. And that doesn't preclude individual members from coming here or asking for clarifications or questions. So that's how I'm not a member of this commission, but that's how I would proceed. But I think we understand where you're coming from. I get it. I'm not suggesting you're wrong or right. I'm just suggesting that we're wasting a lot of time discussing about something. So if we have something that they want to, he has to be read, that's fine, and we'll just move on. I think you're not gonna make any hard decisions tonight anyway.
But in agreement though, Mr. Solicitor, if we do allow this, then we have to live that, like Mr. Sulo said, then we would have to allow every council person that option. If there's no set president of how we do this, if we're not asking them to submit it in writing or come before us. I don't have a problem with each and every, please don't
No,
misunderstand
no, I'm
me.
not, yeah.
I'm fine with every single council person submitting individual and as a body as a whole. I want to know, how is it going to be sent to us? Is it going to be in writing, or is it going to be in person? And if we allow it for one, then in all fairness, it has to be allowed for everybody. So that's fine if we want to allow this like this, but we're going to expect that we could get another 4 emails going through the chair, and we have to sit and listen to all of them.
That's something that you as a body would need to decide how you want to receive them as a body. Certainly when you have something on writing, you force someone to put it in writing, you force them to think about it a little bit more than just picking up the phone and saying, hey, this needs to be changed. I prefer something to have writing, but I'm a member of this committee.
Could we request that the council, if they have letters to send to the commission, that they be made part of the agenda?
Yes.
That would be easier for us if we had that with the agenda.
As correspondence, as official as correspondence, that's, yeah. Just have a portion on your agenda for correspondence, and you would just include it on there, Mark, under that.
Through the chair, just looking at the 2 letters that were sent on April 26th, one to the administration and one to the council president. The only difference is basically the last lines where we set a date for the administration, where it says, in order to meet practical deadlines, the commission requests that the administration responds with written proposals by May 8th, 2023, whereas the differentiation is to the council was as expeditiously as possible, which again, a written email is a written proposal. But I just think the dissatisfaction is it wasn't, again, having it put on the agenda where it's something we can see, and then having a physical document to be able to review. I believe we would accept that more as than just something read to us. That's I think where the disagreement was, not as far as the communication between the council and the commission, just as how it's presented at the commission. I think that would, being part of the agenda and having something physical being placed before the commission would suit, in my own opinion.
So following this, I believe Tuesday, the council meets. You'll address it with the council.
Yeah, I'll put it on the agenda. I'll ask the council president if he wants to put it on the agenda. It's up to, I don't put it on their agenda, but I think we need to clarify how they're going to act and how again, my recommendation to them would, they should have a workshop where they go through their charter provisions and they meet as a group, and then we can give you their suggestions. But I'm not opposed to you. I mean, I'm not a member of this committee, but we have a document before you today. I'd like to go through it with you from the mayor's office, and then there might be overlap for all I know. I have no idea.
So Article 1. This is a discussion. We were talking about switching town to city. Again, this isn't for a vote. So, the body, would it be easier for the solicitor if we just went through the administration's proposals first? Or go section by section?
Up to you.
And starting with city status. The administration proposes changing the first sentence. Change not to now. Again, this is for discussion, so we'll have next time we can put this on for a vote. We can change these with a vote, those basic provisions. So now we can move on to section 2. Unless there are any other changes in section 1 that people would like to discuss. Form of government, powers of the city.
Yeah, so you're going to go, tonight, you're going to go.
We have on here Article 1 and Article 2. So we can go, so I'm gonna go section by section, see if anyone has any issues with.
Section by section of what, sir? The charter or what the administration is?
So we have section 1-1, city status.
Okay, and through the chair, it's not what, and I know he's not a member of the council, not what the solicitor, that I heard the solicitor request. He asked if we could go to the proposed article. Of that the administration.
Well, as we go through the sections, it's gonna correspond with what the administration has for changes. So,
And you're gonna skip the sections that are not.
no, we'll still go through the sections. If anyone has, or when we address the section, like for form of
I'm
government.
losing you. So are we just addressing these sections now? We're gonna go. That doesn't answer my question. Are we gonna do this? On here, there's 1-1, there's 2-2, 2-4. Are we going to go through 2-3 today?
Yes,
So you're going through the whole charter, starting by going through the whole charter.
yes, we're gonna read through section 1-1. We have the administration's input on section 1-1. Does anyone else have input on section 1-1, city status?
Yes, to the chair, I think the people of the town of East Providence should be changed to the people of the city.
We have that voted. So next time, we'll put this on for a vote. We can have that language changed by the law department, and we can vote on that. Unless there are.
Mr. Chairman, will that include the preamble?
Yes.
Yes, that would include.
Thank you.
So as I envision this, just so I'm thinking this in the head, when you have to make these grammatical changes or really non-substantive changes, that would probably throughout the whole charter. So we can start putting, we can,
Make a motion to just change.
we can keep on adding it. We can keep on adding to it. But I envision that there'll be a ballot question, basically, update, city to town to city, change, he to she or he, she, like those kind of non-substantive grammatical changes. That'll be one question. You keep on adding to it as you go along.
Through the chair? Political question, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, propriety. State of Rhode Island and Providence plantations.
Correct. That's out as a matter of law anyway. So we need to strike that.
So we need to strike that.
Correct.
Yes, okay. Does that need to be discussed or?
That'll be part of
That'd be
a,
automatic or?
it's pretty much automatic, but while we're changing, we should, it's
Might as well do it.
automatic, but we should change it. Yeah. That's no longer the legal name of our state.
Section 1-2, form of government. Any proposed changes to our form of government? Okay. Section 1-3, powers of the city. Moving on to Article 2, City Council. Now, we already had a discussion on Section 2-1. So I don't think we need to get back into that. So Section 2-2, qualifications when office shall become vacant. This is adding the administration's proposing adding shall after council members. So this is
Typo.
That's basically a grammatical.
Scrivener's error. So,
And I'm also not sure this same provision, why the A is bracketed like that. I don't know if that's just a typo or, again, it's just not substantive, but so convicted of a crime and they get the A in brackets.
so could we get clarification on what a crime involving moral turpitude is?
Yeah, that's a legal term. It's embezzlement. It's anything to deal with dishonesty, stuff along that nature. So it's a term of art.
So, for instance, I'm asking for clarification just because there's no distinction or doesn't make a distinction between a felony and a misdemeanor. They can overlap.
Correct. You can embezzle. You embezzle less than $500, it's a misdemeanor. Or if it's above $500, it's a felony.
Could you give us an example of a crime that wouldn't fit it under this umbrella?
A crime. The term moral turpitude has a general, recognized to be crimes of dishonesty. So murder would not be a crime of moral turpitude, though it's a crime, right? So, but murder certainly would, I would think you would want to be disqualify you from office, but you would be in jail. So, right.
So should we amend that?
You could say any
Murder
crime.
doesn't
You
qualify.
could say any crime, right? You could,
Could you say any felony or?
any felony conviction, right? But you could have you could have a misdemeanor that you would, like, if you're embezzling money as a misdemeanor or shoplifting, right? That's a crime of moral turpitude, I believe, so.
Doesn't the state have a provision about elected officials and convictions? I think there's also a statute. I don't remember what it is. I think it's like you either convicted or you enter a nolo plea. The period of sentence plus 3 years.
There's a provision that one of the things that has come up was that you're not technically convicted until all appeals have run. Right? That's one of the questions I believe it comes up, right? If you convicted but your appeal, I think there was a Supreme Court case, I think that involved Mr. Cianci, that he tried to challenge it because till all appeals run, you might not be considered to be convicted. So you can look at that provision to maybe broaden it if you want, if that's what your intent is.
If you could give us some options, I'd appreciate it.
Through the chair. Who, Mr. Solicitor, who determines, who says the last little paragraph, his or her office shall immediately become vacant? Who announces that is vacant? Would that be in there?
It's automatic, right? Upon conviction.
So the council comes and meets. It's got to be him now.
Yep.
He has submitted a crime that's involving moral turpitude.
And he's been convicted of it.
Council escorts him out?
Yeah, you set your own rules and proceed. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep, you're the judge of your
I
own.
don't think it's necessary to put in there.
No. It's automatic, right? I mean, so you're the other provision says you're the judge of qualifications of your own members. So that would, how it would kick in. Yeah.
That'll cover that. All right, thank you.
I'll get you some language on that.
Section 2-3, compensation. Is there any discussion on that? Okay. Section 2-4, presiding officer, president, vice president, compensation. The administration is proposing the powers of the council president is to set the council agenda with the assistance of the city clerk and the law department. Would, Mr. Solicitor, could you explain?
It's more of a clarification just to really, under the current council rules, the council has adopted rules that say it. Who does the agenda, which is the council president. I just thought that in looking at this, it would just make it very clear that it's the city council president who actually has the authority to set the council agenda. And it's only after, with the assistance of the city clerk and the law department, but he or she would be the presiding officer. Right now, it's part of the council rules. I just suggested that, again, this is really for clarification purposes than anything else.
Chair. Mr. Solicitor, as I'm sure you know, because you weren't here, but Dylan was here, so it's went through your law department. There's discussion pending regarding the city clerk's office.
Mhm.
That looks like it would change that, possibly. Well, should we go forward and approve this now if we agree with it? Or should we wait until there's discussion and that whole position changes? Because it may not come to be that the council president goes to the city clerk to,
Well, that's where, right. So that's where, yeah, right. So that's where I'm saying that this is interrelated. So if you were to change how, if you were, I know there's been some talk about having a clerk of the council, not necessarily a city clerk, then that would have to change, obviously.
okay, so with discussion pending, we've actually had some discussion, but not too extensive. And there seems to be some interest in that. Should we not approve this? Should we now, or should we?
Well, that's why I said in the beginning, I think that all these votes are preliminary anyway,
Yep.
until you get the final document, because you might have to change something. So it's up. Again, it was just a suggesting, it's just a clarification. If obviously if you have a new position of a clerk of the city council, that would have to change. So we would go back and change it. But that's a great example of how this is interrelated. So what a decision you make on one part might affect another.
The agenda regardless still does involve the city clerk though, right? The city clerk is the one who by state law has to post all the agendas.
No, not necessarily. Yeah, they would have to, it doesn't have to be the city clerk. Could be. Someone has to post it, but it doesn't have to be the city clerk. You're looking at me like I've said something wrong. Is the keeper of the record. Well, that could change, right? That could change by, I'm sorry. That could change if you change the position.
Even though a lot of it's governed under state law? Really? How is that possible?
So there's a provision of law that says that when a charter is a home rule charter is amended or changed, and then it is adopted by the General Assembly, that it becomes a super law that overrides even state law. So that's how you get around that. And other towns have done that. Other towns have council clerks who do clerking of the council and then still have a city clerk that does other stuff. So they split it up. In the absence of a charter, the state law would apply.
So that's the advantage of a home rule charter.
Correct.
So being one of the people who think that there should be a change, I would recommend that, or I would feel that we should not make that change at this point in time until we have further discussion on what we're doing. That's a no for me.
And that's why this is just up for discussion. Yeah. And Section 2-5, council to be judge of qualifications of its members, reviewed by the courts. I mean, we already kind of discussed that. It's pretty straightforward. Unless there's anything anyone wants to add or think of that. So, Section 6 is any vacancy in the council shall be filled for the unexpired term by vote of the electors of the city or ward. Such vacancy shall be filled at the next regular or special election to be held in the city, or the council may call a special election for the purpose of filling the vacancy. If a vacancy in the council shall occur more than 9 months prior to the date of the holding of an election, the city clerk shall call a special election for the purpose of filling such vacancy within 30 days after the vacancy occurs.
Chair? The city clerk shall call a special election. Should that not be the canvassing authority? The clerk of the or the head the canvassing authority itself, Mr. Solicitor? Clerks don't call elections. City clerks don't, as far
Well,
as
in
I
many
know.
towns, city clerks are the elections officials. So many cities and towns, that's why that's probably there. It's probably state law as well. Yeah.
For the record, Councilman Lawson was asking if that portion, saying the city clerk, if that should be changed to city. council. You're asking if it should be changed to board of canvassing.
Yeah, the Board of Canvassing.
Now,
That doesn't make, I mean, that's, yeah, that's, that. The entire board, or it wouldn't be the clerk of the board, the board of canvassers would actually,
the board of canvassers.
Yeah. and declare, and choose the election, right?
When there's a special election at the state level, it's the Secretary of State that calls for a special election.
They set the date.
But I agree. I think it's the board of canvassing. Do you mind just clarifying the language? Agency, the dates,
What do you mean clarifying it?
walking through the dates. So, the vacancy of 9 months prior to the date of holding an election, the city clerk shall hold a special election for the purpose.
So, yeah, so if the vacancy occurs greater than 9 months from the next election, a special election has to be called. If you're 8 months or like, so if say you're up in November, general election is in November and the vacancy occurs in August, then you don't call a special election, you wait till the November election. But see, this is where you got to think about if it's a 4-year, well, it is a 4-year term for council, right? So that's,
That's state law, is it not, Mr. Solicitor?
I don't believe so.
No? I thought that came up with the
It
congressional.
could be consistent with state law, but I don't know. You could set this number anywhere you want.
All right.
You could make it shorter period, right? You could make a shorter period.
And that calling of the special election, that's within 30 days. That doesn't mean that the election has to be within 30
Right,
days.
they got to set the date.
Set the date within that
Right.
time.
And you might want to, that could be, right, set the date, right. Yeah, calling means set the date. But you might want to clarify that too. That's kind of a weird phrase, calling.
What do you think we should say?
Set the date of a special election within 30 days.
So section 2-7 is meetings, generally and special meetings. This is the inauguration for the council and for the, it'll be the city as a whole. It's been brought up to me by different individuals about, right now, this is in line with when the state is sworn in. And it was brought up to me of maybe changing this to the following Tuesday after state officers are sworn in. Just so that there were, is that during the inauguration, I think it was that there was an issue with scheduling on whether or not we would have, we were trying to see if there would be certain general officers that were going to be available or not. They were trying to make it, and some showed up, and some didn't. So this would, moving it to the following Tuesday would re-up their availability.
Will be the second Tuesday.
Would be the following.
So just so you know, if you turn to section 11-14 of your charter, that provision conflicts with 2-7.7. Because all elected and appointed officials elected and appointed for a definitive term, which would be a council member, shall upon their term of office upon the first Tuesday of the first Monday in December. So the law department had a problem with this because we had a little bit of confusion of who got sworn in where. We just kind of went to the default provision and pretended that really 11-7-14 didn't really exist. So when the charter was written, right, we got two dates of when you start, because the mayor's elected for a definite term, and so is the council, right? So I think the mayor's provision tells you we relied on this for the mayor, because that's a new position under the charter. So we relied on 2-7 for the mayor. We honestly, conflicting provisions. We didn't know where the council was elected. It makes no sense to have a new council elected before, sworn in before the mayor is sworn in. So I just kind of harmonized it, but we should probably strike 11-14. We didn't get to that provision yet, but this is another instance where there's an inconsistency in the charter.
Through the chair. In this day and age with so much going on, Mr. Solicitor, is it really necessary at all? What happens if we strike 2-7 and let the new council coming in, let it be determined with the mayor, council, through the city clerk, or however, when that would be? Do you think this is really necessary to set it?
Oh, you have to set a term.
Oh, you have to set?
Yeah.
All right,
You're elected to a term of office. You got to tell you when that term begins and when it ends.
when it's okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. And I don't know, maybe through the solicitor. I know that our city, do you think the December came into play because our city schedule ends the end of what, November 30th and starts?
Well, the fiscal year, no, I don't think
Yeah.
so. No.
Okay,
I don't know why. I don't know why it's like that. Some towns do have, some cities, I know some towns have an election. The new officer, the new elected members take office the December after the November election. As soon as the first meeting, first meeting in December after the certification by the local board of canvassers. And that's usually in December. So I know Tiverton does that, Woonsocket actually does that. The term of office begins in May. All I'm suggesting is, I don't care when the term is, that's for you to decide. There needs to be a term. I'm just pointing out that this 2-7 conflicts with 11-14.
Oh, I agree. And so that it doesn't matter, like fiscal year doesn't
No.
affect okay, that's all I wanted to know, because if it doesn't affect it, then it makes sense to go by the start of the calendar year. So starting with January like Chairman Furtado said, the second, you're proposing the second Tuesday? Is it that what you said?
It would be, so right now it's listed Tuesday after the first Monday, so it'd be the week that follows that. Second
So the second Tuesday after the first, but
Tuesday after the first Monday.
okay.
Clarification. If you look at the city seal, December 1st, 1958 was when the city was incorporated.
Oh.
That's why that date was chosen, always the first Monday in December.
Okay. Good history
That's
there.
where that.
Okay.
It's my birthday. I was going to bring that up. Coincided with the December. It's kind of making sense.
So that is section 2-8, quorum notice of holding adjourned meeting. Mike, a quorum of 3 members, are you just clarifying what?
Yeah, I just think when you read a charter, you don't need a law degree to read it, right? So majority of the whole number of those elected, what does that mean? Like, so I just, to be clear, just it's 3. That's what a majority of the whole number. But that could change if you increase the number of the council, right? So I just said a quorum of 3 members of the city council shall be necessary because that's the majority of the whole. That's a very antiquated system way of saying it. Majority of the whole. It's just clear. It's a clarification. But you can certainly leave it as is. It's,
Kind of like with, I'm sorry, through the chair. It's also like the way Robert's Rules of Order stated, it's like half plus 1, right? So basically it's terminology. So I agree. We should just clarify it. So it reads, you don't need a degree to read it. It reads clearly.
So I don't have a problem with that. Maybe change we can always hold off that recommendation till we go past the section on council members. So that brings us to section 2-9, which is council powers. So I think for this one, I'll read the actual council powers just because it is a lot. So the legislative powers of the city shall be vested in the council without limitation. The foregoing, the council shall have the power to determine its own rules and order of business and keep a journal of its proceedings, which shall be open to public inspection in the office of the city clerk. Establish administrative departments and distribute the work of divisions. That by both the administration and Councilman Lawson was asked to be removed, to distribute the work of divisions. Personally, I'm also in favor of that. That's that phrase, distribute the work of divisions, is found also in the same section of powers for the mayor. And it leads to an issue arising where when the council has the power to establish administrative departments, you have, for example, if the city, if there's going to be a department of recreation that has to be created by ordinance. And therefore, the city council establishes a department of recreation. However, distributing the work of divisions, what is, divisions always underneath the department, and that would involve shuffling around things within the department, which is an inherently executive function. So that line crosses over and creates an issue with the non-interference section, which we can get into later, but just as a point of clarification, and Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, that's the reason, I'm assuming that you
Yeah.
want to remove that.
Yes, it's inconsistent. So I think it's a holdover from when it was a city council form of government, city manager. I don't think they just caught it, but certainly the council as the appropriating authority and the legislative authority should and does have the authority to establish departments within the city. So there are departments that are established by charter, which they have to exist. And then there are departments established by ordinance, like I don't know if recreation is one of them. I think recreation is a department of the city that's by ordinance. Because you have a mayor, the distribution of work within a department, within a division should be with the sole province of the mayor, because he or she is the person who's running the thing, right? So for instance, in the Department of Public Works, we have a division of inspection, we have a division of zoning, we have a division of engineering. If the mayor wanted to combine or, combine zoning or gives, engineering more work, that's only the mayor would be the person who would know that, right? Because he or she is the person who's kind of on a day-to-day basis overseeing it. So it's really just a clarification, but it doesn't take away the power of the city council to establish departments. Only the city council could establish a department. But divisions, work within the division should be, in my opinion, in the administration's opinion, left to solely the mayor, because he or she is the person who's running the city on a day-to-day basis. And I think this really is just a leftover from the prior. I don't think anybody caught it. Because under this, so if the mayor decided tomorrow, and I'm talking about the mayor like as the office holder, not this mayor, but as the mayor decided tomorrow that he or she wanted to combine zoning with engineering, make it one division because there wasn't enough work. Well, he makes that decision under the power of this, right? Under 3-12. And the city council then passes an ordinance that says, no, we want to redistribute it. We have a conflict there. Who wins? Right? Who gets to decide where the work goes? So by taking that out, you're making it the mayor who gets to decide how to distribute work within the divisions.
Mr. Chairman, so if we strike that, which makes sense, then it has to be submitted in another part of the charter, correct? Under the mayor?
It's already there.
So it's in two
Right.
spots.
It's in three. One says the mayor does it, and the other, and then 3-12, which is right here on the sheet. 3-12, it says the work of each department may be distributed among such divisions thereof as may be established at the direction of the mayor. So here, the mayor establishes the divisions, right? So the mayor can establish a division within a department. He doesn't have the ability to establish a department, but he can establish a division within a department and distribute the work among those divisions that he or she creates. Where the council, on the council provision, it says they establish a department as well as distribute the work within the divisions. The conflict there.
Thank you for the clarification.
If the council were to start trying to handle a division of the department, wouldn't that be an interference?
We're not under the charter as it's currently written.
Okay.
So that's why, right. They have that power now. The best example I can think of, it came up, this was something that actually came up, was when the mayor's office, when the administration decided to make a division of communications within the police and fire department and move the communications division, combine the two and move it to a different, basically move it to a different location and distribute the work. That was a mayor's decision. And there was a little pushback from not every council member, but some council members that needs to be approved by the council. Because the charter clearly says they distribute the work among the division. I don't think that's the intent, but that's, so again, I think it's just a clarification.
So, next power, adopt the budget of the city. It's pretty straightforward. Authorize the issuance of bond by bond ordinance, also pretty straightforward. Provide for an independent audit. So that, I know there are going to be questions that the council's going to have. The independent audit, that's covered also later under finance.
I believe the finance department. So the audit is always, has historically, in my opinion, should be in the control of the legislative branch because they're the ones who are, they're the appropriators and they're the oversight. So they control, they need to make sure that the money's going where it should be, right? So the audit is made by them. That's a typical provision in many city charters. But the council, the auditors technically report to the council. The report goes to them because they're the appropriating authority. So it's a check.
This is just a clarification related to the charter, but when it comes to budgeting for auditors, I know for a process we could change the auditors, the independent auditors that we use over 5 years. Do you know if that line item that we pay them out of comes out of the council budget or comes out of finances?
It comes out of finance. It's the appropriation for that is in finance, I believe. But the council chooses the auditor.
Okay.
Technically, they do.
Is that 5-year provision, is that just in the charter, or is that too?
It's I believe that there's now a provision in state law that requires you to change the auditors every 3 or 5 years. I can't remember exactly what it is. I don't know that because I was one of the proponents of it at the time. And the theory about that is you don't want auditors getting too cozy. You want fresh eyes looking at the books every 3 or 5 years. So, and the Auditor General won't allow you to select the same auditor over and over again.
So moving on into number 6, inquire into the conduct of any office, department, or agency of the city and make investigation as to municipal affairs. And for such purposes, the council may subpoena witnesses and require the production of records. A simple majority of at least 3 council members passes a resolution which shall state with sufficient particularity the legitimate public purpose for the issuance of any such subpoena and the scope of said subpoena. So I believe this is just the council's way of obtaining information that it's the branch that has a right of inquiry if it's being obstructed in any way, that it can subpoena is essentially a nuclear option that we can use. Are there any other mechanisms besides a subpoena that they could use to compel?
Well, they could cut the budget.
So,
This is a very typical, this is a boilerplate provision that's in many city charters, town charters. Really designed if you have an uncooperative branch of government, or uncooperative mayor's office, that they have the right to issue a subpoena to get records from the mayor or any department. It's a check.
so next section is adopt ordinances for the government of the city which have to do with records, franchises, finance, personnel, civil service, and merit system, pensions and retirement systems, public works, public safety, public welfare, public health, city planning, zoning, parks and playgrounds, and safety, or safe and sanitary housing, public utilities, and other municipal functions not in conflict with the Constitution and laws of the state. Again, pretty straightforward ordinances. Next, grant, suspend, or revoke licenses, or by ordinance delegate to the mayor the power to grant, suspend, or revoke licenses or classes of licenses, except licenses permitting the sale of alcoholic beverages. City council or mayor may require an inspection, investigation, report by any department or license or application for a license if any applicant, licensee, or citizen of the city is aggrieved by the decision of the mayor in granting, refusing, grant, suspending, or revoking any license or application for a license. He or she may appeal from such decision to the city council. My question is, has the city council ever delegated licensing power to the mayor?
No.
Would it be, to consider, or to validate, was mayor portion was changed to with the last charter, correct? As a the power to the city council could delegate to the mayor. Right, but that they could empower the mayor to grant licenses if they chose to.
I guess the question, Val, is this a new provision? So this allows the city council, if they want to delegate the issuance of licenses to the mayor's office. If they want to, they haven't, but if they want to, I don't know if that's a new provision or not. I don't know I agree with you. Most city councils have other licensing authority, but this gives them the mayor authority to issue licenses. If they delegate it, they have not yet done so, but a future council may, it could. The only other thing that I would like to add to this is there's a section in the charter, and I just wrote it down, where it says that the city council shall approve all contracts for the school department or collective bargaining agreements. It's in another provision. I think it should be brought here as a power of the city council. Just to make it, so the powers of the city council are listed all in one place. And I believe it is in 10-4. It says no collective bargaining agreement between the city of East Providence, including school committee and any labor organizations, shall become effective unless and until ratified by the majority vote of the East Providence City Council. I believe that should be brought under the powers of the council. It's in a different provision right now.
I'm in agreement with that.
That was 10-4.
Yes.
So then we have the famous section 2-10. Council not to interfere in appointments or removals by the mayor. Council to act through the mayor in dealing with subordinates. Neither the council nor any of its members shall direct or request the appointment of any person to his or her removal from office by the mayor or by any of his or her subordinates, or in any manner take part in the appointment or removal of officers and employees in the administrative service of the city, except for the purpose of inquiry. The council and its members shall deal with the administrative service solely through the mayor, and neither the council nor any of its members or any member thereof shall give orders to any subordinates of the mayor, either publicly or privately. Any council member violating the provisions of this section or voting for a resolution or ordinance in violation of this section shall be guilty of a misdemeanor, and upon conviction thereof shall cease to be a council member. Just to clarify for everyone, Mr. Solicitor, because this was a contentious issue, can you clarify what the purpose of inquiry is?
Purpose of inquiry goes hand in hand with the powers of the council under 2-9 under 6, right? So inquire, and this doesn't give the individual council member authority to make an inquiry. It's an inquiry governed by 2-9, excuse me, 2-6, 2-9 subsection 6. So, except for the purposes of inquiry. And if you look at 2-9 subsection 6, it says inquire into the conduct of any office. So the council does have a right to make direct inquiry of department heads during their investigation powers. That's what that means. They don't have the power to make inquiry individually, hey, what are you doing today?
So they don't have the power currently to pick up the phone and say, hey, DPW director, what's going on with the street over here?
They don't have the power to say, hey, DPW director, come plow my street today, or I got to call, take your men off this street and put them on this street. That's interfering with the day-to-day management of the city, interfering with the powers of the mayor. Do they have the power individually to say, hey, what's going on today? Not really either, but that's a little different than directing someone to do something.
So,
Sorry, except for the purpose of inquiry, the council and its members shall deal with administrative services solely through the mayor. So if they have a question of, hey, I saw this guy picking up trash on Taunton Avenue, and I want him over on Warren Avenue. Really, technically, this is gets a little gray, right? But technically, the council person's supposed to call the mayor's office and say, hey, why is this guy picking up trash there and not here? And I want them to do X or Y. And they really can't even say, I want them to do X or Y. You can certainly urge the mayor to consider moving the guy from X to Y, but they can't say, I want him to move X to Y. That's interfering with the day-to-day administration of the city. Luckily, it doesn't happen that often,
well,
in my experience. Mayor may have a different experience, but I haven't seen a lot of it.
just for everyone's awareness, again, this is another section that Councilman Lawson had a comment on, where you would want to advocate that to clarify the language to reflect or to differentiate that the council can't give any directives to city staff, but that they should have the power to reach out and communicate to department heads for information. And I'm not sure, maybe Manny, you know better, in the school department, how, with the school committee, when they would needed answers to things, would they go directly to department heads, or would they always go through the superintendent?
In the past, they always went through the superintendent. However, it was voluntary on the part of the school committee members. If they overstepped their authority and went directly and questioned the department head, there was no penalty, but other than to be requested by, strongly by the superintendent not to do that again and to follow the chain of command and not to confront department heads or individual teachers. For the most part, 99% of the time, those are the rules that were followed. Okay. But there was no penalty. There was nothing in writing, like in the charter here, that prevented it. This is strong language in here that keeps the council member from overstepping their bounds.
So as of right now, there's no mechanism other than a subpoena that, for example, if a city council person wanted to get into, let's say they had an agenda item on something having to do with DPW, they can't have the DPW director present. It would have to be, they would request the administration make the DPW director available at a council meeting.
Correct. That's how it happens now, right?
Have there been any issues with that?
Not recently. We did have issues with the previous council. Some members thought that, some members were not happy that they felt they didn't have to go through the administration to get the council members, a department head to appear at a council meeting.
Well, do you, at the state level, is it common for the General Assembly, when they have committee hearings, to demand, I don't know, the director of the Department of Administration to come before them and testify on something that they ask for? Do they have the power to compel someone to come before them?
They also have the subpoena power, but I mean, obviously, the goal is to try to get people working together. So the departments, if you're on a committee and you want to hear from a department head, or either because of a budget, that person's going to be preparing before your council, for your committee to give you testimony. If you're preparing legislation that may affect the makeup of a certain state agency, they appear. But
So kind of the intent behind this that I can tell from it is that it's incentivizing the administration and the council to work together. That, for instance, if the council wanted the DPW director to be there for a meeting, the DPW director would be there because they want the council to be fully informed
correct.
for a particular item, especially since down the line, when the council has to approve a budget, they would want to be as knowledgeable as possible. Correct?
Correct.
Mr. Chairman? With the language the way it is, does it need to put it can be requested through the mayor's office? I think it kind of does say that though, right?
It does.
That they can request. So for the terms of the council needing a department head to come to a city council meeting before them to answer questions, they have to set their docket. There's plenty of time to contact the mayor's office, to call or email or however, to be able to put it on the agenda, they're going to have to know in advance that they want to discuss that. The only thing that it doesn't allow is mandating every department head to have to be in the audience to be able to be called up at will. And I think that's asking an awful lot because, I don't know, payroll, wouldn't we have to like compensate some people if we had them here all the times? I think the language, it's part of check and balance. It makes sense. I just don't know what Councilman Lawson is looking for, because if it's a matter of just a department head appearing before the city council, then it seems like there's plenty of time to do that, to ask the administration to please have these X, Y, and Z is going to be on the docket. It inquires 2 department heads. Could you please have them send representation to the meeting? And I think that's how it's reading, right?
And also the mayor, if there is going to be an item that's pertaining to, I'm going to stick with my example of DPW, the mayor can also send the DPW director to the meeting of his own accord to speak on that matter. Right?
So when an agenda is prepared, if there's a contract or a project that needs to get approved by the council dealing with a department, under what we've done in the past is we know I know what the agenda is by Friday. Mayor knows what it is by Friday because that's when it gets posted. I know a little bit before the mayor because I'm helping the clerk put the agenda together. And we basically would say, hey, it might be a good idea to have the DPW director here to answer why, he's asking for X amount of dollars to, buy this piece of equipment. And so the mayor will say, DPW director, go to the meeting and answer these questions, or, we'll have someone there. I think people get a little nervous, but I think this is preventing, clearly the provision is meant to say, a council member can't call the mayor and say, I want this person fired, or I want this person hired, right? That's clearly what that means. I think the question where they get a little nervous is it says, except for the purpose of inquiry, the council and its members shall deal with the administrative service solely through the mayor. So technically, really shouldn't be calling department heads directly, right? Technically, that's what that means. Does it happen? Yeah. Is it a crime? No. But it's, the council, it's a gray area, right? You don't want 5 people calling to your department heads every day, making inquiries because the department head's never going to get anything done, right? But does it happen? Yes. But, if it got to the point where the council member was directing a department head, then you're crossing the line. But would you get in trouble for calling a department head? Technically, you could. But it depends what you're calling on, right? I mean, hey, I got a constituent who wants their, street swept. Can you tell me when it's gonna happen? Now, would you call the mayor for that? Probably not. You can't call the DPW director. But technically, this should say you should be calling the mayor.
Through the chair. And I think that's the part that we should clarify or we should change. Because from council members that I spoke to, and I was on the council, maybe Val Perry will help me with this. Every day, council members get a call. They just swept 10th Street, 9th Street. I live on 8th Street. It's not swept. Do you send an email? The way this is saying, you send an email to the mayor, or you pick up the phone, you get to the mayor's, at least his office or him, and say, look, they swept all the streets except 8th Street. They went all around them. This is from the council members that I talked to. This scares them.
Right.
If I call the public works director, which you don't want 5 members calling the public works director, say, I got these 4 streets, I got these 2 streets. But maybe we should establish some kind of, not a new position or anything, but some way that's better. And I'd be surprised if the mayor says that this is too much for him to get as well. On street sweeping, on picking up the leaves, cutting a tree down in front of someone's home. There should be a mechanism. There should be something that we should be able to put in this charter of how a council member gets the day-to-day information to those department heads that concern them. Snow plowing, Most of it's public works, but some of it is a little league member will call you and say the grass wasn't cut, which that's,
Parks, that's
recreation,
parks.
Parks and recreation. Grass wasn't cut at this field. We played in long grass, that shouldn't really go through the mayor, and it would take too long for a council member. They're elected by the people to represent the people and to bring their problems to the administration and to the city. And I think they get very scared. I know my council members, and we had a different form of government, my council members were very scared. I got something for planning, but I can't speak to the planning director. So I think in the long range, I think before we leave this commission, I think we need to come up with something that makes sense for the council to be able to do their day-to-day work on behalf of the people without having to go to the mayor. And I don't think they should go to the department heads as well. We should come up with something.
So we've spoken about a council clerk. Would a council clerk could wear two hats, in one sense be clerk to the council, and in another sense could be what a city clerk sometimes gets turned into, which is being a council staffer. And in this case, we could have it be part of the job description, essentially, that the council clerk could act as a de facto intermediary where they would field the constituent services, just like the mayor has a constituent services person. So that way, if it's the DPW director, they're not getting 5 phone calls. They're getting the one person who's saying Councilman X is, getting issues with, a street not being swept the same way. And I mean, this is stuff that's beyond once you get into the actual nitty gritty of it, it goes beyond the charter, but it would be up to that council and the administration how to work it, but they could get involved in using the same kind of constituent software and everything. So it would be, you can make it a lot more efficient without having to have 5 people calling, or potentially 7 people calling a department head about the same issue. So, but I see your point.
I agree. I like it. Because that's what it's all about. They're representing the people. They've got to get the people's issues, the people's wishes directly into the administration and to the department heads that, that control those departments and those kinds of things that they're getting phone calls on. It's very, very important. But there has to be a mechanism. There has to be a right way and a wrong way. As you know, we've had this problem with city clerks before, where every council member went in and said, you will do that. You will. So it has a lot to do with the personality of the person that's in that office. But I think we should maybe set some rules as we go along. Let that person know if we do establish a new position that answers to the city council that that's part of their duty.
But they just, not to give a directive, just I received the call and this is what it said. And just don't give a directive like, go get it done, but just tell them what the message was. Wouldn't that be satisfactory? Well, not interfering or anything. You're not saying go to the mayor, and you're not ordering nobody to do anything. You're just delivering the message.
That's a good point, and I think that's also what Councilman Lawson was suggesting. And I think the previous council, when this was brought up, some members were suggesting that's what it meant by for the purpose of inquiry. I'm just asking a question. My only caution that I say is that it starts as a question, but it could turn into I'm asking this question, but if you don't do that, like as an implied, how come my street hasn't gotten plowed first? And it turns into, if it doesn't get plowed first, then there's going to be repercussions in the budget. I'm not saying that's how it's going to go, but sometimes that can be, I believe that's the implied reason for the provision.
What if we added the words, where it says solely through the mayor, if we said solely through the mayor or his designee? That way the mayor could designate his constituent services person to be the conduit. And that's where the phone calls will go. The mayor can't spend all day answering his phone. He's out doing his duties as mayor. Some of it's celebratory, but some of it is attending conferences and things of that nature. Somebody needs to be on the other end of the phone, and that's what we have constituent services for.
We could do that.
I think it's really the first paragraph, except for the purpose of inquiry. That's where you've got to.
Right.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who the inquiry is going to, right? Basically saying council and its members shall deal with administrative service solely through the mayor, or the mayor. The mayor can always designate someone else, right? You can say that, but it's the issue. What does that really mean, except for the purpose of inquiry, right? So is it inquiry? Like you said, hey, I was on the Little League field today and the grass was high and, do you mind going, can you check it out for me? Is that a permissible call from a council member to a department head? Does it happen now? I'm sure it does. Are you going to get charged for a misdemeanor? Probably not, but it's a fine line, right? So you got to figure that out. And I truly believe, I know I got some heat from the previous council, but I think, except for the purpose of inquiry, I do think it's not a coincidence that they use the word inquiry here, and it links it back to the powers of the council to inquire into the conduct of any office, right? That's how I.
Don't they already have a website set up or a phone number? If you have a complaint,
They do, but I
call it
mean,
in.
Yeah, Q alert.
but I think it's a legitimate concern of a council member. They do get calls from the constituents, right? They do get calls saying, hey, the trash on this needs to be, my trash wasn't picked up today,
Through the
Sorry.
chair, again, I've actually had a trash barrel missed and I called the city about it and it was resolved without going to my councilman. So I think there's an established procedure here where I think this may not put this on the council, not make it a constituent services, but it may not make it a priority of the council as far as you reach out to your councilman for something when we already have, the city already has something established where people will say, the councilman says, hey, you can contact the city with this. Or in the instance of a Little League field, you can call Parks and Recreation and say, hey, this, we're playing here, this Little League field, is there anything prohibiting a citizen from contacting any of the departments? Because that's why we have departments and not strictly a council member. Because again, that's going to be prohibitive to the council member because that's automatically pushing that responsibility to them when we already have departments that have those functions, in my opinion.
Through the chair. What we used to do back in the day when it was council manager form of government, the council president was the mayor. If the city council had an issue or if there was something that they wanted to do, say it was planning, the mayor would go to the city manager. Do you mind if I speak to your employee or do you want your employee to come directly? I'll give you all the information and you speak to the planning director because here's what the city council wants to do. And it depends on who's there. Depends on who the department head is, depends on who the mayor is, depends on who the council president is. In that stage, it was the mayor. It's very, very tricky. That's why I think we have to almost line it up. Here's what you can do, what you can do. And Mike Sewell had a good point. He called and he got his his, was it trash, you said?
Yes, it was trash and.
Yeah, his
he went
trash
back out and
picked up. Well, a city council person is also a member of the community. So why can't Councilman so-and-so pick up the phone and call that division head and say, Mike Sulo's trash is not picked up on such and such a street? Do you know, it's a touchy situation, and it all depends on personalities. We've had some bad people that went in and, did whatever they did with the city clerk and gave orders to department heads, but we also had some good times when Mrs. Perry and when I was on the council, where they didn't get involved, where they knew their place. So it's very, very hard to control, but I think we need to point out some particular instances in the charter so that these people, if they come in and they're not good people, or they don't represent the city the way they should, that there's a control in there for them to do it the right way. But they've got to be able to do it, because that's what the people elected them to do.
Mr. Chair, is it that basically what a councilman is elected to do? Represent his people and be there for them? So if they call and, have a request, he should at least be able to say, well, here's who you call, and they just lead them to the person they got to call. But he has that obligation to do that, so it's not interfering anything.
I think the councilman's problem is that they don't, or the council in general, their problem is they don't want to violate this. And it's a nebulous entity. When am I crossing the line? The line isn't clear. I think what they would like us to do, and correct me if I'm wrong, but is to delineate a clear line. Like, you can do this, but you can't go too far. I don't know, except for the purpose of the dissemination of information. That's another way of saying inquiry, but yeah. Yes, you can call a guy and tell him, hey, did you know that there's a big oak tree that fell across Pleasant Street and there's nobody there yet? Okay.
I don't think anyone would suggest that that's a violation of the charter, right? Or you're going to get sued for it.
Yeah.
That's that's the way government works, right? But I think there's almost a hypersensitivity to this language. I mean, it does happen now. Council people do call department heads. If it got to a point where the mayor, any mayor, thought it was interfering with the day-to-day, then I think that's a different issue. But you have to write a charter for the good mayors and the good councils and the bad councils so it's not every, you don't know who's going to get elected, so you don't know. Personalities have a lot to do with it, right? There are people who want to cross the line and people who won't. People will respect it. So the language here is very strong. I will admit that it's very strong. I'm not aware of any council members who've been charged with a misdemeanor that I'm aware of since I've been here. So,
It was probably written strongly for a purpose.
well, I think, and again, I wasn't here, but I do think, and you people who worked under a manager system, it was very hard, I think, for a manager. I can just see it from what I've looked at, when I deal with this. Very hard for a manager to make a decision with something, to move something forward without, and if there was any hint of a council person or not liking it, then the person would kind of back off from making the decision or doing something because he or she was afraid that the council was going to can the city manager because they made a decision that they didn't like. A little different now because you get mayors directly elected by the people, so you're not getting rid of the mayor unless he or she gets voted out of office. So, but I will say that this language is pretty standard language in most city charters.
It's standard language?
Yeah.
That was through the chair. That was going to be my question. If it was standard language, is this, because this seems like it's check and balance,
Yeah.
and it makes sense, but I was wondering what other cities do in this situation, because it even makes sense when the previous charter commission switched it over. From what Commissioner Rogers stated, it basically was the same thing back then, except you took the word mayor out and you took the word and put in city manager. So it was probably how they reversed it. And you had your president of, well, now would be the president of our council, but it was the president / ceremonial mayor would go and address it with the with the manager, which was the city manager, and then he would go to the department heads. So basically, we didn't really change anything other than the form of government and the titles. We're still saying, okay, the council president can go to the mayor, who in turn is supposed to do the same job as what the city manager did, but he's got more responsibilities. And then he takes it to his department heads. So it kind of seems like it's the language that was already done. So that would have been my question, like other cities, is this, and I think you answered it already, this is standard language. This is how,
Right.
and is it as strongly written?
There are variations of it, but it's pretty strong. This is standard language. I will say the difference being when this, I'm assuming that this used to say city manager, would not interference with the city council, not interfere with the city manager. The difference is that the council appointed the city manager. So that was a lot of power that you had over the city manager because the council, even though it said not interfere, if you weren't doing your job, you weren't responsive to the council, you were losing your job, right? Because you only needed 3 votes to get rid of a city manager.
Exactly.
That's
At will.
that's the difference.
At will.
So this language became stronger. The implementation of this language became stronger because you have an independently elected mayor. You can't be removed by the city council except for, bad things, impeachment kind of thing.
Right.
But not for day-to-day operations. And I think that's the major difference.
Now, Mr. Solicitor, you being familiar with Woonsocket, isn't this somewhat what happened with the mayor? That the council said that the mayor was not doing her job and they removed her? But now, let me take it to this charter, and I'm being facetious, but I'm not.
Yep.
Because as we've already established, there are good people on the council and there have been bad people in the past. Now there's moral turpitude in here. Does this not allow the way this is, semantics, but, oh, wait a minute, misdemeanor if you go and speak to a department head. So now council person number 1 says council person number 2 went and spoke to the public works director. I can't do it. It's a misdemeanor, moral turpitude. Let's get him off the council. That's a little far-fetched, but can it not happen with this verbiage?
With this language?
Yes.
Yes, I get. Yes, I say the difference between City of Woonsocket is the City of Woonsocket had their charter provision. The mayor was removed from the City of Woonsocket for not following a directive of the City Council because their charter specifically has a provision that says the mayor has such and such duties and any other duties, imposed upon her by ordinance. And there was a dispute of the council wanted a building at X and the mayor wanted it at Y, and they said to do it at X and she didn't. I don't know wasn't there. I don't know the full stuff, but it was a clear directive from the council to do this. You don't have that kind of power here. You don't have the ability to direct by ordinance the mayor to do something. A little different. So every charter is different.
But answer my second part of that question.
Which was
Which I think actually you did.
Uh,
It does allow one council member to bring up another council member as having violated,
well, I guess it's a
and now I want you off the council because that's moral turpitude.
well, it's not moral turpitude. It's a violation of the charter. It's not moral turpitude. It's just a violation of the charter. Moral turpitude is a crime of is different.
Right, but I thought, all right, okay,
That you're violating the charter was not a crime of moral turpitude.
okay.
Mr. Chairman, I guess in a simple form, what this language allows is it doesn't make it the obligation nor responsibility of a council person to contact a department head, where there's a point of reference to go to the mayor, where the mayor would do that. Are we saying that it doesn't happen? It's not their obligation. Well, say a constituent approaches a council person, hey, my trash wasn't picked up, or this street wasn't plowed. They can go to the city and do that as the constituent, as the citizen can go to the city They can ask, and the council person can say, I can look into it for you. It's not their responsibility nor obligation, nor does it put them in a position, like Mr. Rogers had said, to be removed or to say, well, hey, he went and spoke to this person. It defines it. It kind of sets that point of demarcation where it's not the responsibility where I can look into it for you, but, and they may contact the department head, but it's not an obligation nor responsibility to do so on behalf of that constituent. To me, it seems like it's a protective measure again, for the council to do that. They can look into it, but it leaves that gray area gray where it doesn't define it as black and nor white.
So I agree with you. I will say the language is strong and it's inherited from the city manager. I also would say if we choose to, we could soften the language. I think checks and balances is important. And the two things, one, yes, the mayor's elected, that threat of being sacked by the city council is no longer there. And the other thing too is that in theory, the department heads are the mayor's department heads. Most of them are at-will employees of the mayor. So if Councilman X, calls, department head and says, hey, my, street hasn't been paved, whatever. It seems like a common sense thing that the department head would then tell the mayor, Councilman X called me about this. So I can see it both ways. I have no problem leaving the language as is. I have no problem adding duties if we go with a council clerk and making them an intermediary. I could see softening the language a little bit. In terms of a practical nature, I don't think it's really an issue right now. I think it's been overblown, particularly with the last council. I think towards the end, they figured out how to work it out with common sense. And I don't know about this council as well. I haven't worked with them, but I haven't seen any press conferences calling for charter changes or crimes of moral turpitude convictions. So that's, I think it's fine as is. So I now want to gauge the body's opinion. It's a little past 9:30. We've gone through past section 2-10, which is essentially most of the city council sections. There's still more in Article 2. There's canvassing, city clerk, which we've talked about previously, and then it gets into planning board, zoning board, the audit, and then it gets into the details of the of ordinances, and then it turns into the mayor. So do we want to keep going, or do we want to call it a night and table the rest for our next meeting?
I think this would be a good place to break.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have a motion to table the rest of Article 2 until our next meeting. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item. Adjournment. Technically, we still need to adjourn. Is there, we tabled the motion, so
I'll make a motion.
there's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, and there's a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.